Hello everybody and welcome to a slightly unusual episode of Sunday Night Live with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk. There is a reason why I'm wearing these headphones. The reason is my monitor station that connects pretty much everything together in my studio died this morning. In fact, I powered up the studio this morning, and just as I was going to switch the monitor station on, I switched it on and nothing happened. It didn't light up, nothing. And I got that distinct kind of slightly burning smell that you get. And I thought, oh no. And I checked the power supply. The power supply itself is working. There's a blue light, so power is passing through it. It looks like it's the PSU on the board of the monitor station that has died. I mean, it's been in full almost 24/7 use for 8 years, and it has worked beautifully, and it has served me well. It has survived 3 house moves, and it's worked really well. However, its day appears to be done. So I fortunately I have some money stashed away in my PayPal account, thanks to certain very generous people, and I was able to spend some of that money to buy a new one, which should be arriving tomorrow. I managed to find a dealer, a PreSonus dealer here in the UK, that will do next day delivery. So I ordered it, and it should be arriving tomorrow lunchtime, which would be awesome. And then I'll just swap out the old one for the new one, and we should be back in business. It's just annoying. I have to listen to anything in my studio. I have to use these. It's a pain in the butt because I didn't want to rewire everything so that basically audio went direct out from my interface to my speakers. I could have done that, and that would be fine. But I didn't want to do that because basically the way the monitor station works, especially with using loopback, is I use the monitor station to monitor the sound that goes out to YouTube. Without that, I'm only monitoring these headphones now from what's coming direct from the main output of the interface. So I'm not listening to loopback, I'm listening to what's going on the interface. So tonight's stream, as we're doing stuff in Studio One, yes, I can hear it, and you guys should be able to hear it too, but I don't have as much control over volume levels as I would normally have. So we're kind of flying a little bit by the seat of our pants here, because I really can't hear what's going on, to be honest. I mean, I can hear the audio, it's fine, but I just can't hear what you guys are hearing, which is a tad annoying. But hey, as Bobby Booth says, that's electronics. Eventually something is just going to pack up, and monitor station is one of those that packed up. So it's a bit of a shame, but it's a real testament to how solid that device is, that it has lasted as long as it has without needing replaced. Because like I said, I've been using it every single day for 8 years, and it has enabled me to do countless videos, and close to 350 shows. We're getting close to 350 shows, and of course all of those collaborations I've done with Johnny Gibe over the years as well. I wouldn't have been able to do any of that without the monitor station. It's a bit annoying that it's died, but it's okay. Like I said, I have the financial wherewithal to be able to buy a new one, which I did this morning. So it took me about 4 minutes to actually source and purchase the replacement. So it will be arriving on tomorrow lunchtime. So that's cool. So it means I have to do my morning of my work on headphones. Yeah, it is what it is. All right, so let's get the show on the road, shall we? And we'll see. I do believe it was Christina over in Denmark who was first in the door. So well done to you, Christina. You got first in. Awesome. Followed almost, I would say there's maybe about a 30-second time gap between Christina and Billy. Yeah, it was pretty close. So maybe tied for first in the door there between Christina and Billy. And we've got Tony Cardona here, and we've got Chris from Ragnar, who sent me a very, very cool email, which I will try and go through on the show today. And we got Spin 180 here as well. We've got Stephen Wilson. We got Dwayne. And we got Kyle Trajuziak. We got Aurora's Boring Alice. And we have got Kyle Trajuziak. And we got John Hawk. We got Don Oliver. We got Ron Figura, who says he likes the intro video. Yes, there is no audio on the intro video. Just for those of you that were wondering, you were seeing this video and there was no sound to it. There is no sound to that video. It's muted. Okay? So you will not hear the playback of the audio on that video. Which is not a bad thing because it's only like 30 seconds long, and if I were to play the audio, you just hear the same thing over and over and over again until I start the show, which I didn't really want to do. So there we go. Did we get the magic smoke? No, there was no smoke. It was funny. There was no smoke came out of the device. There was no sound to suggest that it had died. No, nothing weird like that at all. It just smelled like something had fritzed. So, if I were to open it up, I would probably see something, but I'm not going to do that. Let's see, what else do we have here? We got Mike Johnson over in the Philippines. It'll be breakfast time for him. He's probably been up all night, though, if I know hhim. We got Gardner99 here as well. Hello, mate. Good to see you. And we got Neil Thompson, who says, here's a shocker for y'all. The oldest piece of electronics that I have that still works is a Radio Shack Realistic brand mixer from the mid-80s. Wow, and it still works. Well, I mean, here's the thing. Electronics products that were manufactured back then, they were built to last. Because that was just the MO of the time. Was, everything was built to last. Cars, fridges, toasters, microwave ovens, washing machines, dishwashers, all of that stuff, all of the domestic electronics stuff that we rely upon was all built to last. There was none of this kind of, it lasts maybe a couple of years at best and then you just replace it, which I think is incredibly bad. Not just from a consumer point of view do I think it's incredibly bad, but I also think it's incredibly bad environmentally, because what do you do with all of that stuff? Now, granted, there are some electronics things that you can recycle and reuse to make new products, but, there's a lot of what goes into electronics products that you can't recycle, and so they just get, they dig a massive, great big, extremely deep holes somewhere out of sight, out of mind, and they bury all that stuff in the ground, and then it rusts, and if it's, and eventually it will turn to iron oxide over a period of maybe a few hundred years, and you just have to hope that there's nothing in that device that is going to be, damaging to the environment in a long-term sense. But yeah. Who else is here? Paul Morgan is here, and Matt Cochran has just joined us as well, and Keith from Radio Tut Frumpet has joined us as well. He says, I hate it when I have to smell Fritz. Bugs him as well. Yeah, Fritz really should use some deodorant, I think. Ron says, my Casio M10 from 1981 is still plugging away. Well, I mean, this guy here, the Yamaha QS300, was brand new in 1993, and it still works. I use this thing every day, and sometimes it will stay on for a long period. Like, it will work for, I don't know, 18, 20 hours a day, and it's a Back in the 90s, I used to take that out on gigs as well. I don't anymore. It's just strictly a MIDI controller keyboard these days, but and maybe for the last sort of 10 or 15 years, it's been doing that. But I used to take it out on gigs as well, and it just works. Again, stuff in the 80s and 90s was built to last. Not anymore. Gardner99 says we are living in a disposable society. Yes, we are. We are living in a disposable society, but unfortunately our environment is not designed for that, sadly. So we end up just ruining our planet. But that's a whole nother subject that is out with the scope of this channel and this show. Let's see. Woo! I yodeled there like a teenager. Carl says Rust never sleeps. Yeah, it probably doesn't. Paul says my everyday Technics turntable I bought when I was 15 in 1978. Wow. He says I still have my DX7. Yeah, those are amazing keyboards. Again, built to last. Built to last. All of that late 80s, early 90s synth technology is built to last. Unfortunately, unlike us people, we are still 100% biodegradable, as Kyle points out. Yes, absolutely. Human beings, when they're not actually actively doing things like destroying the planet, we ourselves are just flesh and blood and, was it 70% water? And so, yes, we will biodegrade quite nicely and do nice things for the environment. Anyway, so tonight's show was not meant to be biology and how things degrade and electronics and how bad they are for the environment. That was not really the MO for this show, because Sunday Night Live is a Studio One show where we... what I do is I seek to answer your questions about Studio One. So if you've got usage questions, how does this work? How does that work? What about this particular use case? What about this particular scenario? Get them in the chat. And please start by posting. When you do a post, you start by saying at Jonny Lipsham Studios, because then that highlights it in red for me. Doesn't for you, but it does for me. And then I can separate questions from general chat. And that would be good. So that I can differentiate questions from you guys just talking to each other, which I certainly actively encourage you do, that you talk to each other, and that's how we build this great community. Now, as you're listening to me talk, you'll probably notice I am sounding a little congested. Again. Yes, I am feeling a little congested again. Gosh, I love chronic flipping illnesses. For those of you that don't know, I have a condition, a blood disorder called chronic venous insufficiency, and it's fun, let's just say, because the medication that I am on to help manage that makes my immunity kind of be a bit low. So anytime that there is a cold, or there's a flu, or there is something like that, I am pretty much guaranteed to get it. So if there is a new variant of COVID that just happens to come around, I am very, very likely to acquire it. And so I have to be pretty careful. But I've spent this weekend at a conference, and I've been meeting lots of people I've never met before. And so likely I have picked it up from one of the people there. And so, yeah, I'm feeling a wee bit run down. So please forgive me if I sound a wee bit run down and a wee bit shit. Sorry about that. Hopefully, after much more chicken soup, which my wife is going to lovingly make for me because she is off work this week, hopefully I'll be fit as a fiddle in 2 or 3 days, hopefully. Chris has a question. He says, when is the next challenge? Excuse me, snorting. That is a great question. We are in April just now. And I am looking to do... Because summer is basically going to be a relatively quiet period. Just broadly, just generally a quiet period. So I am looking to do a couple of challenges. There won't be any prizes for these challenges, but basically they are just an opportunity for you guys to release some music and to give you some impetus to do that and some stimulus to do that. So there will be a couple of challenges over the course of this summer, and then the next kind of bigger one, which I am hoping I will be able to get something that I can give away for, will be for Halloween, much like last year's Halloween challenge. I am thinking about that already, and I'm thinking about the parameters for that particular challenge, and then we will have the Christmas one as well. So basically, the plan going forward is to have 3 kind of larger challenges. One is an Easter one, which again won't have a prize. So the 2 big ones, which I'm hoping I will be able to regularly provide prizes for, is going to be Halloween and Christmas. But throughout the course of the year, I will drop in, I should say, a few different challenges that have different parameters, but they won't have prizes. So not having prizes doesn't mean don't get involved, okay? Get involved, because, you know, they are an opportunity for you to put into practice the things that I talk about on the Songwriting Simplified show, to put into practice some of the concepts that we talk about. Things like melody writing, counter melody, harmony, chord changes, use of modes, and things like that, and different styles. So that's what those challenges are for. And yeah, the bigger ones will be a little bit more involved. Things like Halloween, things like the Christmas one will be a bit more involved. And like I said, I'm hoping to have some prizes that I can give away, whether that's a hardware product or software products. I'm not sure yet. I have to think about those. But yes, that's my plan. So I hope that answers that question for you, Chris. I know that you are very eager to be making music and to keep moving forward with the things that you have been putting into practice just of late. So it'll be fantastic to get some more challenges coming. So yes, I have one in the pipelines that I'm working on, developing the little concepts for the first of the summer challenges. And as soon as I have that in place, then I will announce it on a Songwriting Simplified show. So if you want to get involved, make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you hit that notification bell. And then when I have a show on Wednesday night, which is when I do my Songwriting Simplified show, which is 6 p.m. Central Time on Wednesday, stay tuned. Be involved and be involved in this community. And as soon as I have that kind of available, I will announce it on the show, and I will also make a community post on this channel as well. So another reason to be subscribed, because you'll get a notification of that community post as well, and that'll have all of the details of the challenge and how to submit your piece and all the details that go with that. And so yes, I will be doing that. So I hope that answers that question. Just Bob says, I'm looking to buy an 88 key keyboard with MIDI capability, not a name brand. Will Studio One still recognize if not in their list of brands, or is it a gamble, no guarantee to work? Good question. This is not an 88 key keyboard, but regardless of the size of your keyboard, and as we all know, size doesn't matter, right? So this is not an 88 key keyboard. It is a Yamaha keyboard, but it is not listed in the list of brands in the Studio One external devices option. Now, the thing about those, all of those, they are just a shortcut, right? That's all they are. They're just a shortcut, convenient way. If your keyboard is a particular brand, a particular model, there is a preset for that keyboard, and it's just one click. If you don't have a keyboard that falls into any of those categories, like this one, the Yamaha QS300, then you just have to create it. And when you create it, make sure you set up the MIDI receive from port. If you're just using the sounds inside of Studio One through Presence, MyTie, Lead Architect, whatever, then you just need to set up the receive from port, and you can forget about the send port. Okay. But if you're wanting to use the onboard sounds on this thing, I would never want to do that because they sound gloriously 1992, 1993. Unless I'm writing pastiche early 90s music, I'm not going to use those sounds. But if I were to, then you set up the send port as well. And then that enables Studio One to send MIDI data to this guy and use the sounds that are on this as well. So you've got MIDI in and MIDI out flow going between the keyboard and Studio One. But if you're just using onboard sounds, you don't need the send to port at all. You can set that to none or just leave it blank, and it's fine. I've had this set up for the last 10 years in Studio One, and it works flawlessly. So it might not be an 88 key keyboard. It's just, I think this is 73 or something like that. So it works just fine. So is it a gamble or no guarantee to work? What it means is there just isn't a preset for it. You're going to have to create that yourself. If it's got MIDI, either through the 5-pin MIDI cable or MIDI over USB, it should work. If it doesn't, then you may want to go and see if there is a device driver for it from the manufacturer. If there isn't, then there isn't. This one doesn't have one because it predates the use of drivers, so it doesn't have one. So it's just plug and play basically with a MIDI cable. Let's see. Secret Squirrel is here. Hello, mate. Good to see you. He says, I have looked recently for an all-in-one orchestral, well-rounded orchestral kit. What are your thoughts regarding East-West Orchestral Opus? I ask as it's on sale. We actually have one of the co-founders of what is now Persona Software. Is a guy called Wolfgang Kundras. And he was involved with Matthias Yuan in creating the code base for Studio One, and which was based on something called K2, which was going to be the next version of Crystal Audio Engine, which was developed by the pair of them when they were running a company called Crystal Audio Labs. And Personas bought Crystal Audio Labs and all of its assets and IP, including Matthias and Yuan, and the code base for K2. And K2 basically is the foundation of Studio One. So that's kind of a little bit of backstory as to who he is. And he left Personas in 2014. And he is now very heavily and deeply involved in East-West, and is heavily involved in developing those software products for and those libraries. So anything coming out of East-West is going to, by and largely, be pretty good. They also have a bunch of sound variations that are designed specifically to work with Studio One and the sound variations engine inside of Studio One. So they're going to work pretty good. Opus is pretty good. There's an awful lot of samples that are available and some good velocity layers as well. So East-West is a very good solution if it's like your very first orchestral library. Spitfire would be another... the BBC Spitfire Orchestra would be another good option for your first kind of orchestral library. We have one as well, the Persona Symphonic Orchestra, which is kind of, if you don't have a ton of money, if kind of your budget is like quite constrained, you can get that as well. You should be able to now get that from sweetwater.com. Now that the Persona shop is temporarily closed whilst we migrate everything onto Presonus.com on its new platform, which we are working on, by the way, just so that you know. When we closed the shop, yes, we kind of had to do it at the same time as launching Studio One 6.6. Timing was a bit annoying, to say the least. But we kind of didn't really have a choice, unfortunately. We had to close it. We had to move it all onto the new platform, which we are working on at the moment. And at some point next year, I don't quite know when, but at some point next year, it will become a thing, and you will be able to get hardware and software products, and hopefully some of the other merchandise like the t-shirts and the mugs and things that we had before. They should all be available in one place on Presonus.com. That's the plan that we're working towards, because we did have something called an apparel store that was available in shop.presonus.com, but it actually linked you to another platform that was a third-party platform where you had to create an account with that platform. So we had Presonus.com, and then we had shop.presonus.com, which was on, so those were on two different platforms, and then we had the merchandise stuff, which was on yet another platform. So we had 3 platforms for trying to sell our stuff. And really, what we have needed to do for a long time is actually put them all into one place. So that's kind of why what has happened. So at the moment, if you want to buy Presonus Symphonic Orchestra or any of the other Studio One add-ons, you're going to have to go to a third-party retailer to get those at the moment. But we're working on it, and it's going to be pretty big. It's going to be international and universal and all of that. So it's going to be pretty awesome when it's done. But yeah, that's why you can't get things like the Presonus Symphonic Orchestra from us directly at the moment. Presonus. But like I said, it will happen. We're working on it. Let's see. Mike Johnson says, I like East West Opus, very powerful all-in-one solution. Yeah, it really is. It's very, very good. Chris says, it's great, subscribe and you'll love it. Yes, I do believe it is subscription only, I think. I think East West is subscription only, if memory serves. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I believe it is. Gardner99 says Nectar will work. Yes. The cool thing about Nectar is Nectar have something, I think they're still doing this, where they have a Studio One integration file where if you download that as well as the device driver for the Nectar and you install them both, you get some very tight integration between Studio One and the Nectar keyboards. So things like faders and knobs and pads and stuff that are on those Nectar keyboards can be actually used to trigger features and functionality inside of Studio One really easily. So there's that with Nectar as well, which is pretty cool. So Jonah is here. I just spied him come in, which is great. Whenever you tell somebody the name of your condition, make sure you enunciate the V very clearly. Yes, Venus. Yes, Venus as in veins. Yes. Yes, you're absolutely right. And we've got Tim from Tim Talks Audio here as well. Good grief. I think we have a moderator full house. Almost. I don't think Jonny Gibe is here. If he was here, we would have totally a full house. That's awesome. Just Bob says to Tim, he says, loved your WoW VST video. Yes, so did I. It was really good. Really, really good videos, Tim. Keep them coming, dude. Keep them coming. Mike Johnson says, I have an Nectar, and yes, there is the Studio One integration file. Yes, I believe they are still doing it. Yeah, Rich says, I don't think he's here. Yeah, Jonny Gibe is not here, but I think if he were here, we would totally have a moderator full house, which is awesome. And we did peak very briefly at 30 viewers, which is nice. But we've only got 15 likes, folks. So if you like what we're talking about here, please do hit that like button. I would appreciate it. Just Bob says, I have a couple of third-party VSTs. They emulate real foot pedals. Nice. Is it possible to rename them with the actual name? Example of Fuzz VST and call it BG Muff in the listings of VSTs. I don't think you can, because I believe VSTs have very specific naming conventions. So I don't think you can. However, when you drag and drop that plugin into Studio One, you can rename it there, so it shows up in the console as Big Muff or whatever you want to call it. I have to admit, maybe this is my immaturity coming over, but the name of that pedal has always made me smirk pretty much immediately. But yes, important announcement, folks, and I had to get right up to the microphone now because I really want to emphasize this. I can't emphasize this enough, but I highly recommend you check out Rich's new content that he has posted up on the PreSonus Exchange. He says, new Exchange content for you guys on Studio One Plus. So if you are a member of Studio One Plus, go and get Rich's new content. You will not regret it. Rich's stuff is freaking awesome. He will not necessarily like me saying this about him, but I think he's a bona fide genius. He will be embarrassed about me saying that, but I actually, I'm not kidding around. I actually genuinely believe that he is a genuine genius. So, just on the evidence of the content that he puts out for people, for just for free, for just public general consumption, just my growing friendship with him, he's one of the kindest and most generous people I think I have met. So, what was that? Oh, it was my fridge. It was my fridge turning on. Otherwise, just search in Studio One browser RC dash. Is that what it is? RC dash. Okay. Just Bob says Rich's stuff is epic. Yes, it really is. It's genuinely epic. Definitely. All right, we got 23 minutes left of the show. So I hope that's answered that question for you, Bob. Let's see what Jonah's got here. He says, anyone looking for a seamless workflow to use an external audio editor in Studio One like Isotope RX, check out his video. Yes, 100%. Again, I'm going to say definitely check out that video. I watched it this afternoon. It's very, very thorough on a really, really cool workflow for using Isotope RX, especially at the moment we're in this situation where Isotope are not currently using the ARA protocol for integration with RX, which I think they should be. It's a freely available SDK. They can just go get it from PreSonusSoftware.com and they can code a version of RX that'll work in it. I mean, there's a few, Vocalline have managed to do it, and Melodyne, obviously, with, Celemony with Melodyne have managed to do it. So, it's there. It's freely available. All they need to do is just go get it and actually just start coding a version of their products to use it. So I don't know why Isotope won't do it, but for whatever reason, they seem to be particularly resistant to it. Even though a lot of their customers are Studio One guys, and they are constantly hitting up tech support at Isotope saying, come on guys, just go get that SDK. Because I think they should. Just Bob says, yes, thanks. Hoped I could change the name to make it easier to locate. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure that you can do that, because I think plugins, particularly third-party ones, require certain IDs. I don't know that you can do that. Maybe one of my moderators would be happy to correct me on that. I would certainly be happy if I'm wrong about that. Then certainly somebody jump in and correct me and say no, actually you can. That would be fine, because I mean it's not something I've ever considered doing ever, so I don't really know from that point of view. Let me just quickly go and get Chris's question that he emailed me. Whilst there's kind of not a lot going on in chat. He says, say you have an orchestral piece that has no actual tempo, so maybe it's in free time, something like that, I'm assuming, like rubato, maybe, robbed time, which is what rubato means, other than what the conductor imparts. Okay, so that suggests rubato. Say it's all string section with no drums or timpani or anything like that. Now you want to overlay an audio track of a female operatic singer. If you want to do this, for one instance, it may be possible. Certainly, all you have to do is just get your singer to basically just sing over the top of the orchestral part. They're obviously not going to see the conductor, so they're kind of going to have to probably listen through and rehearse through with the orchestra backing a few times until they feel where the changes in tempo take place. So you would be doing this without a click. So no click track, no metronome, just the conductor kind of like freely kind of doing a sine wave with the tempo. And then you want your female or operatic singer to then cut the vocal track over the top of that, overdub that. So yeah, it's going to take a few rehearsals so that your singer kind of knows where the ebbs and flows of the tempo is. And then once they've got that, you can totally record without the metronome. And it'll be fine. It will work. And it'll sound good. And then you go on to say, but if you want to replicate this so it can be repeated and aligned to a grid, what would you propose? I understand that in stretching audio, you sometimes must suffer changes in either one of the audio events. But if that is acceptable, how could this be accomplished? This is a good question. Because even with something that is in rubato time, robbed time, where you have an ebb and flow of tempo, where it's a little bit faster here, a little bit slower here, a little bit faster here, a little bit slower here. And so therefore there is no real strict tempo. You can use one or more elements of your orchestral backing track to create a tempo map. You can either do that in Studio One directly, or you can do that with Melodyne. However, if you're using something like strings, it's going to be harder to do because not a whole lot of transients. Because strings don't really produce a lot of transient unless they're pizzicato or spiccato or staccato or something like that. One of those attos will get you some transients. So it's easier for Studio One to work with, or it's easier for Melodyne to work with actually finding the tempo. And then you can just drag that onto the tempo track. And then the tempo track will then have all that ebb and flow. And then the click track, of course, and the grid, by extension, will be all in sync with this constantly ebb and flow of tempo, where it's speeding up a little bit, slowing down a little bit, speeding up a little bit, slowing down a little bit, as you have that going on. So therefore you can, in essence, create a tempo map that has all of those tempo variations mapped out in it on the tempo track, which will guide the metronome and the grid. So if you then decide, okay, great, I've got those recordings, but let's say now I want to have some MIDI instruments. Maybe you're not really a bass player, so you want to put some electric bass on there, or an upright bass part using a virtual bass instrument. The challenge you will have, if you don't use the tempo map, the challenge you'll have is being able to play in time and keep with the ebb and flow. You can do it with rehearsal, sure. Just, Do a lot of rehearsal takes until you get comfortable with where those ebbs and flows in the tempo are naturally, and therefore you just kind of play along naturally as if you were playing a real bass. You can certainly do it like that and just don't quantize anything. Just leave it completely free, unquantized, and then you can turn the snap to grid off, and if you decide, that note, I didn't place it very well, you can freely just drag those notes about in the note editor and move them to where you want them to be, and therefore do a little bit of manual quantizing just to kind of move things so that they are better placed, where you go, oh, I was a little early there, that's fine, I just take that note and I drag that way. Okay, but that one was a little bit late, okay, that's fine, I just take that note and drag that way. It means that you'll have to do probably quite a lot more editing, but the end result will be pretty good. So you can do the whole thing without using any tempo map, or you can use a tempo map, and then when you quantize your notes on your MIDI instrument, your virtual instruments, they will fall into time with the tempo, and they'll be guided by the tempo track. And you'll actually hear, if you put the click on, you put the metronome on, the metronome will speed up and slow down with the tempo track. So, Chris, I hope that is a good answer for you. It will require a bit of extra work. Working in free time or in tempo rubato in any DAW is a little bit of a challenge. Unless you just decide you're going to forget about the idea of quantizing anything, you're going to forget about the idea of aligning anything to a grid, and you're going to forget about the idea of having a tempo map. You're just going to do everything in free form. You can certainly do that. And even with a VST instrument, you can certainly do that as well. You just won't quantize anything. So I hope that helps. Rich Cresswell says, going back to that whole thing of renaming plugins, he says, don't change names of anything. Add it to favorites. That's what it's there for. That's a very, very sound piece of advice there. He says, right-click in Studio One, add to favorites, and then it will be there. Assuming favorites is like saving an effects chain. No, favorites is not like saving an effects chain, but you could save it as an effects chain if you wanted to. But you can if you're using a plugin regularly, you can do right-click and add that to favorites. I can kind of show you a bit of how that works in Studio One. So let's go over here. So if I was to click on favorites here and open it, you'll see that there's nothing there. But let's say I'm a big fan, which I actually am, but I just don't tend to favorite things. But let's say I'm a big fan of the Pro Q. I can right click and I can choose favorite. Okay, and now you'll notice that there's a star next to it. And let's say I'm also a big fan of the DC1A, the DC1A3, which actually I am also. And I'm also a big fan of the MJUC. These are ones that I just use all the time, and I like the Brainworks Opto compressor as well. Let's see what else. And I like the compressor as well. Fat channel, obviously. Let's see, what else? Pro EQ, why not? And then if I do all of those, and then if I go up to the top here, and if I click on favorites, you will now see that those plugins that I have stated are my favorites, I use them the most, they now appear in this list. And then I can just drag and drop those from that list. Instead of having to scroll up and scroll down through all of my plugin lists, I can just make a bespoke favorites list that is a unique list of plugins I know I use the most. And I know that I'm going to want to have these freely available in one small list. I could favorite everything because every plugin I have in my collection is great. I could favorite all of them, but that would defeat the object. So if I'm going to use this wisely, if I'm going to use the favorites list wisely, it's not favorite as in how much I like it. It's more like most used. Plugins I use the most. That I find myself scrolling through, dragging, dropping into Studio One the most on any given project. get any given song. That's what this list is for. So if I go, okay, I know I use this all the time. I use this all the time. I definitely use the Fat Channel all the time. And I certainly use the Pro Q an awful lot. And I use the Pro EQ pretty much as much as the FabFilter Pro Q, for sure. So now I've made a much smaller list. It's much more easily navigable. In fact, I could turn off the thumbnails. And look how small that list is now. It's just dead easy to grab it and drag it and drop it. So much easier. And I think that's what Rich is getting at when he's saying this is what Favorites was designed for. And he's absolutely right. This is exactly what Favorites was designed for. Track presets are a whole nother ball game. Track presets are fantastic because you can create a bunch of inserts and sends, and then you can save that as a preset. So if you've got a specific vocal chain that you use all the time, like let's say this one here, I don't want to wreck this, so I'm going to add I don't know why I did that. I'm going to add a new track here. I could have just pressed T. And I'm going to stick this at the top here. And I'm going to close that. But let's just say I have this. This is my vocal thing my vocal chain that I use, like, let's just say all the time. I can just drag and drop that on here. And it gives me the Pro EQ settings that I like. In this case, it gives me pretty much nothing. It's just a flat Pro EQ. Let's see, is there anything else in here? No, like I have complained about. I think I mentioned this a wee while ago. Well, with the new update to Studio One 6.6, it blew away on my track presets, unfortunately. So I have to recreate some of them, which I haven't done yet. But there are some. These are ones that are already pre-created. And I've got effects chains as well. So, for example, let's say I use this one a lot. That one can go in there. And then that will give me a de-esser, and it gives me fat channels. So it gives me a fat channel with an EQ and a fat channel with a compressor, as well as my my plugin allowance de-esser. And those are the things that I use like all the time. And then I can just remove all of those. But yeah, creating effects chains and track presets, very, very useful. You can just drag and drop them, and it has everything you need it in one place. So I hope that that helps with that. And I think that's kind of what Rich was getting at. He says, just an exercise, but look at the top of the browser. Down a little, you'll see folders for favorites, recents, etc. They'll be accessible here, and when you add them via the console of the track, Just Bob says, okay, favorites is the way to go. Thank you. Oh, forgot this was available until Rich said something. There you go. So yeah, I hope that helps. And Bobby Booth also points out quite correctly that you can hide plugins you don't use. Definitely, and I think this is something that is much overlooked by folks as well. That you can just hide stuff. Does it mean that they disappear, that they're no longer available? No, it just means that they're hidden from view, so you don't see them. If there's things that you go, maybe it's some of the native plugins in the native Studio One plugin suite, and you go, I'm just never going to use that. Why would I ever use that? It's just not necessary for what I do, for the music that I work in. So I don't want to have that in my list to scroll past. That's fine. Just right click and choose hide. And that's it. It's hidden. You'll not see it. It will not appear in your list. And then you won't have to scroll past that all the time anymore. And you can do that for as many plugins as you want. In fact, there's a little wrench tool in the browser. Let's go back to that, because I can show you this as well. I go back over here. You'll see up here at the top where you see flat, folder and vendor. This is like for sorting, how you want it to be viewed. And then you got this tree mode, and then you've got this show thumbnails, and then you've got this little manage plugins wrench. Now this is not the plugin manager, but if I click on this, you'll see I've got a bunch of VST2 FabFilter plugins. I only use the VST3s. So I went in here and I turned off all of these little white dots. These are all grayed out because they're hidden. So if I click on the wrench tool again, you'll see I'm only showing some of the FabFilter suite. I'm only showing the VST3 versions of these plugins because those are the only ones I want to use. So that's why all of these ones are hidden, because I'm not going to use them. And then the ones that are active, you see they have a nice white dot next to them. So if I'm pretty certain I'm never going to use them and I don't want to see them, like the gate, the Pro G, I can just turn that off. And I can close that, and you'll notice it's not in the list anymore. But if I decide, actually, maybe not. Maybe actually I do want to use that. Maybe in this particular song, and then once I've finished with it, I'll just hide it again. You can totally play that game. You can go and hide anything that you know you're not going to use. For example, RX7. I have a really old version of RX. But I use the denoise all the time for editing a podcast that I do every week for my church. And sometimes I use the dehum as well. Like if the heating fans in the winter kick in, they can be picked up by the lapel mic. So I'll occasionally use the dehum, but for the most part, I don't use the declick or the declipper. I don't use any of those. So I could ostensibly just hide both of those, turn that sucker off, and then you'll only see the two that I actually use, the dehum and the denoise. So it's really very, very useful to be able to hide stuff that you know that you're never going to need to use. Let's see. Keith says, not sure what you use a lot. Open the plugin manager and click on statistics tab. Now sort by last used. Never used it. Ditch it. Exactly. That is definitely another way you can do it. If you want to just sit down and go from a more statistical point of view, go in the plugin manager and you can certainly do that. So let's do that. Let's go view plugin manager, statistics, and you can see when these were last used. For example, audio filter used last year. Well, I can turn it off from here. The Rock Rack V3 player, which I use as a bass amp, which actually, by the way, is really, really good. Okay, not really an awful lot you can actually do in the interface because it's only the player version, because I didn't actually get around to actually purchasing this guy. You can just turn it off. Turn it off there. Look at that, the BX Solo. I have never used in 4 years. I could just turn that guy off. All right, so now it's hidden from view. You know, same with the Alicia Niveau filter. Not used that in 3 years. Hardly used the expander very much. And then there's all of those that are already turned off. Yeah, these are all quite revealing. It just actually goes to show I never used the mix verb. Yeah, that's actually pretty revealing. I'm trying to see if there's like one that I've never ever used. No, there isn't one that I have never actually used. I think I've used most of these at least some point in my entire Studio One life. But yeah, so that's another way to do it. You can do it this way through the little wrench tool, or you can do it in the plugin manager. Kind of up to you how you want to do it. Never hide the Alicia. Yes. And I have, as you know, I have never hidden it, but I don't often use it. It's very rare that I actually find that I'm in a position where I need to use it. All right, so Mike is going to do an after show, which we can all pile over for in about 54 seconds. So if you have found this show to be informative and useful and helpful, please do hit that like button. I would like to finish the show with 25 people watching and 25 likes. That would be awesome. That helps me out a lot. Likes and that kind of thing help me out a lot. Subscriptions help me out a lot as well. So if you are not subscribed and you've just been watching, the chat is in subscriber mode, so you're not able to ask your question. Hit the subscribe button when we do the next show, which will be on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified, and you're just like, I have a songwriting question. Get subscribed. Hit that notification bell, select all notifications, then you don't miss anything. You don't miss this show, you don't miss the Sunday, the Wednesday night show, the Songwriting Simplified show, and you don't miss any of the other videos that I've got coming this year. Like I said, I've got quite a lot of content coming in 2024, and we're already coming up on 4 months into it. So we're at the end of Q1, we're going into Q2. I've got a bunch of stuff coming over the course of this year that is going to be very, very exciting. I'm ramping up content for this channel like never before. So make sure you're subscribed, make sure you're notified, and you get to enjoy all of my content. And if you think my content's really good, then please share it as well. Share the videos with people you think, hey, this would actually be good for you too. All right, so Kyle says, I see nothing. I don't know what Kyle is referring to there. Just Bob says, if you shut off in Plugin Manager on startup, does it ignore and bypass when firing up? No, it still will do the scan of your plugin. If you don't want a particular plugin to show up inside of Studio One at all, you need to uninstall it. Or you need to remove it from its folder where Studio One is scanning for those plugins and put them in a separate folder on your desktop or something like that. So if you're like, I'm probably never going to use that plugin, you can either uninstall it, get rid of it entirely, or you can put it in a folder that you just go, unlikely to use. Maybe just label it, plugins I am unlikely to use. Put all the DLLs and everything like that in that folder, and then rescan your plugins. And then when you next start up Studio One, it will not scan for those plugins because it won't see them. It will see them as not there. However, caveat with that approach, if you open a song where you have used those plugins, they will be listed as missing devices in that song, and you'll have to go and put them back in order to make that song work. Okay? So anyway, my voice is starting to wilt, as you can probably tell. Neil says they should make it so the knobs and switches on the Pultec EQ emulator and Fat Channel are permanently locked, forcing the user to use presets only. Controls are great except on that wonky thing. I'm not sure I could possibly agree with that. Because I think the knobs and switches on the Pultec style EQ in the Fat Channel are absolutely fine. I use that Pultec EQ a lot, and it works just perfectly for me. So there you go. And I mean, you say there, I know, use my ears, but what if looking at controls hurts my brain? Then don't look at the controls. Here's the thing. On the actual hardware units that those things are emulating, there are actual knobs you actually have to physically turn with your hands, with your fingers. That means you actually have to look so you can see what you're doing to make sure that you're making the correct adjustments. So, yeah. And, of course, those are not locked. On an actual hardware Pultec EQ, none of those knobs and switches are locked. You basically have to put marker tape on them to show where you want particular settings for a particular thing that you're EQing. And you have to basically tell people, don't touch the knobs, because it will mess up that mix. That's the beauty about a DAW, is that it's all in the box. It's completely recallable. The only person that's going to mess it up is you somebody else just passively walking into your studio and moving a fader on your mixer isn't going to change anything. So, all right, folks, that's the end of the show. Thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate it, and I appreciate all of the likes. We now have 20 viewers and 20 likes, which is pretty cool. Thanks a lot, everybody, and I will see you on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified, and hopefully my voice will sound a bit better. Until then, folks, you can join us on Mike's After Show Zoom, or not, if you wish. And I'll see you on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified. Good night, everybody, and thanks for putting up with the fact I have to use headphones. But normal service will be resumed on Wednesday. Good night, everybody.